In your news headlines for Tuesday, the Primary School Teachers Union say league tables just create winners and losers. National standards would be used to create the league's tables for schools. NZEI President Ian Leckie is surprised the government's come up with the idea, given league tables haven't made a difference to education performance overseas.
It's unfair to a huge number of schools to provide those sorts of judgments on their practice based on very narrow national standards.
And there's a warning not to make league tables too simplistic, and it comes from an educational advisor to the government. The Prime Minister's raised the prospect of school league tables for primary schools to be based on information gathered through national standards. Melbourne University's Professor John Hattie says it's all about the way the information is presented.
When you make a decision about schools, you make it on a variety of factors, and so as long as the data is put out in that variety of ways, then I don't have a problem with that. I just have the problem when the temptation is to try and put it into one number.
And as the asset sales debate heats up in Parliament, State-Owned Enterprises Minister Tony Ryall has sent out a release titled Remember When, which details Labour's wholesale sell-off in the 1980s. MPs are debating the second stage of the mixed ownership model bill, with opposition parties promising to delay its passage for as long as possible. Mr Ryall says assets were sold off under urgency in the late 80s.
All traipsed through that lobby to sell almost $10 billion of public assets during the 80s. Mike Moore, Annette King, Phil Goff, until recently the shining lights of the Labour Party.
Throughout the debate, Labour, New Zealand First and the Greens plan to introduce numerous amendments in an attempt to draw out debate. Labour leader David Shearer says whenever he's out collecting signatures on a petition calling for a referendum on the issue, he's overwhelmed by the opposition to the plans.
They've come up to me with my Labour caravan and said, look, I'm a national voter, but I really want to sign your petition. I think there's a feeling in New Zealand that this is a backward step, that it will result in higher power prices.
A team of 20 police are investigating the death of a Paeroa pizza store owner, Jordan Vidoris. The post-mortem examination confirmed the 55-year-old's death is suspicious. Detective Sergeant Glenn Tinsley says they're working with Bay of Plenty colleagues to determine if there's any link with the attempted robbery of a service station in Waihi and aggravated robbery of a dairy in Katikati yesterday morning. And searchers say there's still every chance a tramper missing in Auckland's Hinua Ranges is still alive. Ronnie Fong hasn't been heard from since Saturday afternoon when he texted friends to say he was delayed. Search and Rescue Coordinator Sergeant Dean Duthie says Mr Fong could well be alive unless he significantly injured himself. He says the search is continuing this afternoon and will be reviewed later this evening. And new research reveals a rising amount of alcohol imagery in music videos on New Zealand television should contribute to the country's poor drinking culture. The University of Otago's Dr. Fiona Gunasekara believes there needs to be stricter rules in this area.
And if we recognise the fact that this is just alcohol advertising, then maybe we should actually get stronger about this. New Zealand On Air funds New Zealand music videos, and maybe they should be not funding music videos that have alcohol content.
And Christchurch police are continuing to knock on doors tonight as they crack down on offenders who have failed to show for court appearances. Today's operation began at 6 a.m. this morning with more than 70 police officers across the city knocking on doors to target offenders with outstanding warrants of arrest. By 2 p.m, a total of 34 arrests had been made on charges of failing to answer court bail, and all have appeared at the District Court today. And court proceedings against Occupy Auckland protesters have been dropped. Some were charged with contempt of court after continuing to camp in Aotea Square despite being served with a trespass notice. The Auckland Council lawyer Ross Burns says the occupiers could have been fined or imprisoned. However, he says because it's been quite some time, around 6 months, since the occupation occurred, the council has decided it doesn't want to take matters further. And Tuni Purata says she never meant to offend anybody by carrying her Bible while at work at Auckland's Sky City Casino. The 65-year-old devout Christian loved her job as a tower host at Sky City and wants to stay. She faces a disciplinary hearing and a possible final written warning for carrying the Bible in her pocket, a breach of the casino's uniform policy. Lawyer Andrew Scott-Howman says Sky City wasn't worried that it was a Bible in her pocket, but that it was an object that didn't go with the uniform.
The law would probably look at this and say it was reasonable for an employer to specify that type of requirement of its employees in that particular type of role.
And researchers found drinking large amounts of tea could increase the risk of prostate cancer. Scientists have discovered that more than 7 cups a day raises the chances of men developing the disease by 50%. The Scottish researchers tracked the health of more than 6,000 men over a period of 37 years for the study. And an Auckland mother who went into labour on the southern motorway has given birth, and both mother and baby are doing well. Police were attending a collision on the motorway this morning when the woman's distressed partner pulled up asking for urgent help. With the woman's contractions only 3 minutes apart, police rushed the woman to Middlemore Hospital, where upon arrival, the woman gave birth an hour later. And that's all from me. Ka kite anō.